Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Kirby.
Hey, so welcome back to OSINT IRL. One of the things that we just kind of wanted to mention is, today's Thursday. It is not Wednesday when we normally do our recording. We are doing a little bit of identifying what's going to work best for us. As of now, recordings for now and through the future, I think we're going to do them at this time on Wednesdays. Is that right, Sarah? So
yes,
it is 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. So 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays in the future, we think, is when OSINT IRL is going to be filmed. Other than that, you can always watch it later on either Twitch, YouTube, or on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
So Sarah, what's our topic today?
Today's topic is the Netflix documentary Untold: The Shooting at Hawthorne Hill. And specifically, we're going to discuss the court case of Michael Barrison. He's an Olympic equestrian trainer who was charged for attempted murder in 2019, and he was able to successfully plead temporary insanity in April of 2022. So that's what we're discussing today.
Yeah, and like he successfully argued temporary insanity. Yes. Not only that, but he's actually back at home now.
He is back at home now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a New Jersey jury acquitted him of attempted murder and weapons charges because they said that his mental state prevented him from having actual criminal intent. One of the reasons that we're discussing this particular case, though, is because a part of the court case was based on social media posts.
A lot of the court case.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it, yeah.
Another quick bit of background. So apparently I believe it's Lauren Kanarak was the person who was shot, and she had been a client of Barrison where she had been boarding her horses and riding horses there. He was a trainer who was an Olympian, but then also a trainer at a really high level, higher than the level that she had previously been. And he let her ride one of his horses once, and so she kind of took over and took that horse and started entering in shows and that sort of thing, which in the end was actually lowering the value of the horse. So that's the beginning of a conflict, but conflict went crazy, and social media was a huge part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah, you have something you want to share. So I'm going to go ahead and share your screen. And
so this gives a little bit of context of the case.
Michael was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. The state said that he tried to kill both Lauren and Robert. In March of 2022, Michael went to trial. The state argued that Michael premeditated the shooting. Michael's defense argued that he had been temporarily insane. Lauren had used a number of tactics common with narcissists, like gaslighting, to harass and threaten Michael. Michael was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was sent to a mental health facility where he will be periodically evaluated. Presumably, he will be released someday. Now move.
And he has been released.
Yes. So, but the reason that I wanted to highlight that one is it's the emphasis on gaslighting. So a part of the case was her gaslighting. So that her gaslighting, theoretically contributed to him going insane. And it's a precedence for looking at how people are making posts on social media when they're gaslighting. And when you look at the scope of how many people gaslight on social media, it sets a very strange precedence.
Now, when you're saying gaslighting, I would say more harassment. Because sure, some of it may be gaslighting, but it's more than just gaslighting. Because gaslighting means that you actually have, in some cases, like I think access, I guess, to the person more. I'm not sure, but anyway, I would just say that let's make the big harassment loop over it rather than just gaslighting.
Well, and I think that you have to add the other components in there. So, for example, she was sharing a house with him, and she was harassing him off of social media. And then, so there was, harassment off of social media, but then you had the posts on social media that were gaslighting and also additional harassment.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm thinking is when I think of her, when she's writing posts that like talk about war, are the ones that he's taking as threats. And so there's a lot of the posts that to him, it seems like they were direct threats to him. Right. That's not necessarily gaslighting. Gaslighting would be like, a little bit more insidious and more, I think, to the point of where she would, what he's seeing is not what's true, I guess.
Right. And and I think that he especially felt that way because of some of the things that were happening off social media combined with the posts. So yes, absolutely. Which brings us to some of our questions. Because
before we do that, I wanted to say one more thing as far as the background for this. When we're talking about the trial, in the actual trial, when she was on the stand, they asked her, were you trying to break him, like as in break his mind? And she actually said yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but okay. Anyway, so is this kind of a legitimate excuse? You've got a bunch of questions. Go ahead and throw them out there.
So as you just highlighted, the first question is, how did social media become earth and background noise in the Bear-Son case? And how did it become a part of the courtroom narrative?
Right. Well, I mean, the courtroom narrative part of it, obviously, because it was part of the evidence. It was like actual Facebook posts and that were in the evidence. But the whole thing about the background noise, social media, people will make jokes about how this isn't real life. This is social media. Go outside and touch grass or whatever. But it is real life. This is something somebody's saying to you. And it's even worse than something somebody's saying to you in that, one, it's persistent, and two, it's public, right? So now somebody said this to you once, but now it's sitting there on a wall and it's always saying it to you because it's always there. You can't just go and like scrub it away or like stop listening to it, whatever. It's always there if you look that direction. But also everybody else gets to see it too and possibly repeat it, possibly, amplify it, things like that. So social media is real life.
Right. And it can have a direct impact on reputation management as well.
And mental health. Absolutely.
Yeah. And mental health. Yeah. So
you hear that a lot, like people who say that, they go viral for something not good, that the constant updates and that sort of thing, that it really does affect their mental health a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, even things that are not true. I mean, look at revenge. Right. I mean, revenge porn.
Yeah. And it could be, it's not just internet rumors, it's an actual trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So one of the other things that was interesting with this case is it really raised a question on how should investigators distinguish between gaslighting, harassment, venting, threats, reputational harm, and legally relevant evidence. So when is something, for example, when you post something, when can you sue somebody for defamation? I mean, even level.
As the investigator, I don't think that's our choice. I don't think that is us to decide. The investigator should just be collecting that information because it can be different in different cases, in my opinion. So first of all, the lawyers are going to let us know whether or not it can be, but it's the person who's being harassed. How is it affecting them? It could seem harmless to us. I know I did a harassment case not too long ago where if I didn't have the background that the harassed person did, it wouldn't, because I don't have that background. What is that? Why is this such a big deal? But because of her background and previous trauma, this was major to her. And it was definitely threats, and she felt unsafe. And so I emphasized that when I got my investigation together and kind of said that, make sure that whoever she gave it to, whether it's her lawyer, to the police, whatever, that she could emphasize that this is not a minor harassment because of the way her own personal past traumas are used against her.
Right. And I think what you just said ties directly to this case, because some of the posts, the social media posts, somebody else would look at those posts and say, "What is that a threat?"
She's joking, or or this is a what is it? A lyric,
Right.
right?
Right. So, yeah,
But
or
to
the
the person who's
it,
being harassed, they know or they feel the intent in that lyric.
right. And so, like when she made the statement, a king has to sacrifice his queen. Somebody else would look at that and say, "How is that threatening?"
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a reference to chess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I totally agree with what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
So the next discussion point is what types of social media content would be most important for investigators to preserve early on? So posts, comments, screenshots, videos, metadata, direct messages, timestamps, audience reactions. I would argue all of it.
Mm-hmm. And make sure that you have not only collected it, you build metadata around everything you collect as well. So there's a time that you collected it, the date and time you collected it, and where you collected it from, because there's different places in the internet where things may show up, and it's really important for you to identify where you got things. So for example, I found this post on YouTube. I found this post or this video on Instagram or whatever. You need to say where you got it and when you got it, and when you think it was posted, if the whatever service gives you that, so that you can build a timeline with it. But also don't forget to hash it as soon as you get it, so that you can prove that, hey, this is how I have it as of this date. And if things change going down the line, you can prove, hey, this is the same one that I had from a certain date, or here they gave me, they may be showing one in their evidence, but it's not the same as the one that I have hashed on a certain date. So something was edited.
And actually, that gives me 2 points. The first is a plug for one of our sponsors.
Okay.
Which is Forensic OSINT, because Forensic OSINT helps you preserve that information that you're collecting, especially for legal cases.
Right in your browser. You'll take care of it right in your browser.
Right in your browser. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that Kirby actually has a webinar that talks about how to hash. So how to hash evidence.
On our website as well. So if you go to our website and you go to our resources, you'll see that there's a section where you can just use your own computer. You don't need anything fancy. If you want to get Forensic OSINT, that's going to make it one click and easy. But you can go to our hashing page and just follow the instructions and build yourself a little hashing tool on your own computer for free. Very simple, and hash the content of that you get as your evidence.
And always save as you're going along, because you might see something and you can go back, and when you go back, it might be gone.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And sometimes if it is gone, that's just another piece of evidence. So then you want to take a screenshot or whatever of that and hash that to say it was here this one day, it was gone the next day, just in case it shows up again. And they may say, no, we never deleted it. You have proof that it was at one point disabled.
Yep.
So for example, a YouTube post or even a Facebook post, somebody could put it private mode and then put it public mode again and toggle it on and off. And that might be a whole method of how to harass somebody,
And that actually, so this is an interesting question, is should deleted posts or edited posts be treated differently in a legal case from content that remained public? So, this is a very interesting question, because when you look at the political climate, you have politicians left and right, they'll post something and then they take it down.
Right. So my thing is, don't treat them differently, but have iterations of it. So again, you see it up, save it. Don't think, oh, I'll come back and save that later, because again, it might not be there, right? But you see that if you go back later and it's down, save that as evidence. You see that it's edited, save that as evidence. If it's edited before you get to it, a lot of times it'll say edited on there, save that as evidence. And then if there's a chance to see the pre-edit, sometimes you can click the edit button or something like that, you can see the pre-edit, save that as evidence as well. You want to see the lifetime of it. In addition to that, there may be even comments that come along as time goes that you want to save as evidence. One reason would be to show that people are actively seeing it at a later date. So for example, my whole theory about it's on a wall, it doesn't go away and it gets amplified. Sometimes it doesn't get amplified immediately. Somebody posts something, for example, on TikTok is notorious for this, but anywhere, you put something on Facebook, a post, we save it as evidence. There's no comments underneath it. We come back in a week, there's still no comments, or maybe we see a week after, we take it and we save it. But however, somehow it goes viral 3 weeks later, and now there's a whole bunch of other comments and it's way more harassing. Don't forget to go back and get that so you can compare it week 1 to week when it did go viral, and like the time dates of when those comments are made, so that you can say, all right, that seemed like nothing was happening when it was first posted. It seemed like it was harmless, but then it went wacko.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And maybe you can even identify at that point who amplified it to make it go viral.
Yep. Yeah. That's always a good one, is to look at who amplifies. Yeah. So, how should investigators categorize, like when you're if let's say you're doing assisting a client with vetting employees, how should or could, and should is definitely in there, how should an investigator assess tone or sentiment of people's posts, whether it's sarcasm, exaggeration, emotional language?
Yeah, the whole thing about how the language is, you have to think also about the subcultures that person's in, because some things are jokes to some of us that are not jokes to others, right? And it just has to do with like what subculture you're in. For example, and Sarah's gonna start laughing here, but I've been proselytizing, evangelizing about Dungeon Crawler Carl. And so if I just come out in the middle of something and be like, God damn it, donut, some people are going to get it and some people are not going to get it. And the message is different because whatever language you say something in and the subculture that you are communicating to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I do think it's important to categorize, when you're doing sentiment analysis, but absolutely you have to frame it within the culture. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So the next part that I wanted to talk about with this particular case is the open source intelligence and the importance of building a timeline of those social media posts as it related to escalation of the harassment. So what would a complete OSINT timeline in this case need to include?
So obviously the posts, but honestly, I think you could have a series of different timelines that should be able to zip together to make one master timeline. So you should have a timeline of, for example, the posts with the different comment timelines, possibly with that. But then you might also have a timeline of, OSINT pictures that he's been seeing in other people's social media. So for example, we're looking for a fugitive. Maybe we see that fugitive's post. We also see, oh, his sister has a picture of him and her, at a certain location on this day. And then he posts, or maybe the sister also posts a picture later that has his car in it. So we know that he's still there. So that those would go along in their own timeline, but also zip into the main timeline as well. What do you think, Sarah?
I absolutely agree. And I would add to that the OSINT posts, like the social media OSINT posts, should be timelined with the actual physical actions of what's happening off of social media.
Oh yeah, the whole thing should be timelined. Absolutely.
Right.
But again, splitting them apart makes it so you can evaluate them independently. Mm-hmm. And to be split apart, I don't mean that you need to have like a whole bunch of different timeline tools. It could be one timeline tool, but like color coded or something like that. To make sure that you have an idea, a quick look, so you can say, okay, look, there's all this activity, but 200 text messages in these couple hours, it jumps out at you, rather than seeing like a whole bunch of activity all together.
Do we have an AI agent for that yet?
There's so many AI timeline builders out there right now, and they're so nice. They're beautiful. Okay. So they're definitely something people should go and look into. I don't have a favorite. I know that I tested out a number of them at one point, and I think it's Sarah, we did it on the show like way back when, I think. But and I did pick some that I really liked, but there's so many. And actually I built my own. It's not very great, but I did build my own in Claude at one point.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking about, was the one you built. So
I'm sorry.
Okay. I was thinking about the one you built.
Oh yeah, it's very, very plain.
Maybe
It's
we can rebuild.
no, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
see.
All right.
You know, like I love the idea of like building cool tools and just throwing them out there. But the problem with vibe coding is that you don't know how
Yeah.
secure it's going to be, but also,
It's not open source also.
well, I don't care about that so much. I mean, building a tool, whatever. I mean, it'd just be a tool that would help you with your own open source data. And I'm totally down for that. Intelligence tools, that's another thing in my toolkit right there. But the thing that I have about it is that I would put a disclaimer that this is a vibe coded tool out there along with it. And, you know, and it just really is not going to be as nice as some of those that are out there already. So I think that if I was to make one to be for me, it's just to keep my own data to me. I think people could do that instead, or use one of the beautiful ones that are out there.
And I think that's a good point, though, is that people can make their own customized tools for their own personal needs with these vibe coding tools, and they don't necessarily need to share them because it'll fit what they need.
Right. And they need to evaluate to make sure that tools are working, because otherwise they're going to roll the hurt when it comes to court time. But yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of building something that just works for me. And I have a bunch of GPTs on ChatGPT that I built just for things that I need to get done. And they're not public. There's no reason to. And a lot of times they're personalized. They say Kirby does this or whatever. So
right. Okay. So what are the dangers of like the public investigators or the hobbyists building a timeline and sharing it without having access to private communications or law enforcement records?
Okay, I'm going to say that there's not a danger in that.
Okay.
Unless you are assuming parts of the timeline that you don't see, if you know what I mean. So if you can see what you can see, you can build on a timeline, but that doesn't mean that you can assume like that, okay, this person was here, the person was, in the neighborhood of the crime, and then was in the neighborhood of whatever, right? Just because you can see on his social post that he was, that doesn't mean that that's the person to commit the crime. Don't make assumptions because of the data on your timeline. You can make, questions and inferences with caveats, for example, like, okay, this doesn't eliminate him, rather than this proves that he's there.
And this also includes analysis of competing hypotheses.
You could. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And what role should geolocation, timestamps, device data, and platform metadata play in validating the sequence of events? And where is the line between that and digital forensics?
There is no line between that and digital forensics, in my opinion. Where does it? The thing that I think I would say to keep in mind when you're talking about the metadata, that's GPS coordinates, timestamps, things like that, whether it's in images that you found online, or maybe it has to do with, like maybe you do a little bit of trilateration on X, Grindr, something like that. The key thing to remember, though, is that these devices aren't perfect. So when you get to a certain coordinate, that coordinate that's in that data might be off a little. Maybe it's a cloudy day. Maybe there's nothing that you can tell from like the different sun calcs and the different other websites out there that tells you what the weather is and all the different atmospheric conditions. But maybe that day there was a Wi-Fi outage in that neighborhood of town. So the Wi-Fi sniffing thing where a lot of the location data is collected from wasn't working, and the buildings were high, so the GPS stuff wasn't as accurate as usual either. And you would never be able to know why, but the GPS coordinate is off more than it normally would be. That's the thing you have to keep in mind, is that there's a lot of variance in this, even in technology. Additionally, I know that there's at least one tool that sometimes will read the timestamp in EXIF data on a phone wrong. It just has the calculations for the time zones wrong for some reason. But that the data on the photo is still exactly right. at least to that phone. But again, the phone could be manipulated as well. I had one phone that I kept in Eastern time zone all the time, regardless of what was going on. It was an Eastern time zone. If I took pictures with that, no matter where I was, it was an Eastern time zone. So again, there's a lot of things that you have to think about besides just the metadata says that it's at this time. I got to put it on the calendar at this time. And let me actually mention also, can I talk about my favorite guy, Hank Green? He had a tool. He has a tool. It's out there, having to do with the images that came down from the latest trip, the Artemis trip around the moon, right? And he was putting all these images in a big timeline because he's a nerd. He likes timelines too. And he was noticing that, wait, these time stamps don't necessarily fit. And he had to identify that each individual camera, he was going to have to check their time against a known thing to identify what time they're on, because they're out in space. What time zone is their camera on, right? So so what they ended up doing is he identified a picture that was taken that had to be at a certain specific time period because it was as live seen at the Houston Space Center. And then he was able to correlate all the other cameras against that and adjust for time. And that's something you might have to do. You might have to adjust for time on either the camera something's getting, if you're getting metadata from photos, or the social media, whatever it is. You might have to figure out if something's wrong with that.
And do you have any tips for how to check if the geolocation is spoofed?
So spoofed location, honestly, it depends on the device on whether or not the location spoof is going to be easy to tell, like metadata wise, because you could see like things that maybe don't match in EXIF data, but somebody could be like super meticulous and get that all right anyway. So as far as things being spoofed, I would say you might have to do more analysis on the actual content of the post or the photo or something, as well as just the looking at the metadata. Because again, I wasn't spoofing metadata when I was like taking pictures of things with my East Coast time stamp, maybe on the West Coast where the sun wouldn't match the time period, right? I wasn't trying to spoof it, but things didn't make sense for that. So that's something to kind of like make sure that everything makes sense across the board. That's something that's going to be kind of hard. Sarah, do you have any advice for people about spoofing?
Well, I think part of it is looking at consistency, like you just said, and looking at the so you wouldn't just you would have to look at that metadata in context with the other information, and then the other thing is to see if there's any, if it, like for example audio, you can look at the sound waves to see if the audio is spoofed.
Right, because you can see cuts in them. You know, that makes me think of something though too. Like, so when we're talking about spoofing, especially geolocation.
Right.
We talk about building a timeline, but also don't forget to use maps and put that timeline on a map. The time with the spots on the map, because that can help you find a spoofed geolocation.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
So, and then the next thing, how would people look at, like, how should investigators look at online behavior to see if there's like a escalation toward real world harm? Is it 5 angry posts, 10 angry posts, 20 angry posts? I mean,
I'm writing a paper on this right now. I'm actually like just paper. Thank you, Sarah, for giving me this little thing. People should be paying attention to my LinkedIn, so I'll definitely post it there. It's going to be on our blog. But it has to do with escalation to violence from rhetoric, right? And so in my case, the one I'm looking at is the guy who went and tried to firebomb Sam Altman's house, right? How do we identify when he started, moving into violent activity? But also, how do I keep my eyes open for this without knowing where it's coming from? I don't know where the next lone wolf's going to come from. And if I'm somebody who's doing maybe executive protection for Sam Altman, I need to know that stuff, right? So the thing is, there is a methodology that was put together. I feel like it's FBI. I have a source for it somewhere, and I wish I would have like really quick here, but let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it is called, it's from CISA. It's called Pathway to Violence. And there's a whole methodology in this Pathway to Violence about stuff that you're going to be looking out for. And that's one thing. That one has to do more with school shootings, but there is a lot of behavioral information before violent act, and it's not something like 5 posts. Let me go and actually, now you have me on this. Let me go look at my, I have a little list of 6 things to watch out for. So let me go look at that really quick. Sorry, I should have like.
That's okay.
Up first. Let's see. All right.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm scanning through there. It's going to be a long article. I actually have part 1 and part 2, but I'm going to put them all together. But anyway, okay. So there's grievance and fixation. Those 2 things do not indicate violence necessarily, because you're going to find them widespread and across all over. So for example, grievance meaning, like in this case, AI is an existential threat was the grievance, the original grievance, right? And then the fixation on specific companies and individuals. You do start worrying about that when you start seeing fixation on things. But then when they specifically start either collecting data or focusing on one person, target identification, that's number 3. Then there's leakage, which would be manifestos, posts, or indirect signals about, directly towards someone. Then mobilization, which could be preparation activities, recon or procurement of materials. And then the capability would be the 6th one. So if you have all 6 of those things, then that's when you start thinking, okay, things are escalating. And like I said, I'm going to publish a blog article very, very soon about this.
Very cool. I look forward to reading it. All right, so the next part is looking at mental health, online harassment, and legal strategies. So in this instance, Verasana obviously argued that the social media posts were one of the things that impacted him mentally, and that again lays a precedence for other legal cases now on looking at how disparaging posts or negative posts or harassment posts can be used in court. So the defense argued that the online conduct contributed to his mental breakdown. How should courts evaluate the claimed psychological impact of the social media activity, which I think is a little bit out of our scope, but how do we know what to collect to give to the court on that in the first place? Do we just give them everything in the kitchen sink? Or
again, we give that to the lawyers, and the lawyers have to decide what the priority of things are. And they might actually even direct you. So if you're working directly for either legal team, they might say, okay, here's the stuff that matters to us. This stuff does not. Okay. I don't think that's really, I think as an investigator, that's not our lane.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think? I mean, do you have input on that separately?
I think that in general, it's good to get guidance from the lawyers, but at the same time, I think it's helpful, to use possibly some automated tools, like Ferretly, or something similar to Ferretly, that actually are able to categorize what is a negative post and a positive post in a more objective way, because that can actually help do some triage.
Tagging it in a positive, negative, whatever. So tell us about Ferretly.
So Ferretly is a company that it provides AI analysis of social media of different people to screen them for things like employment or safety or security. And Ferretly actually presented at, or didn't present, but they were at the exhibitors at the 10th Osmosis conference during COVID. And I really got very interested in Fairly because they were doing sentiment analysis of people's social media posts and putting it on a pie chart, and showing kind of how well balanced that person is from the pie chart.
Oh,
They have 70% negative posts and 30% positive posts, or 5% neutral posts. And it showed, which people might have toxic traits, or which people might, harass people. Or so I thought it was a really interesting artificial intelligence automated tool to use. And I
what else would be interesting with that, though, I think, is not just like the one person. So like we think we have like, in this case, it would be just one person, right? Her post to be negative or whatever. But if we think of like an organization or like an outspurt organization of an activist group, right? So maybe you have this little group that you think they're going violent. Maybe you could use that just against just the people in that little spurt as compared to the whole.
Theoretically, you could. I mean, Fairly does have a set of their ethics and rules and guidelines on what you can and can't do with their tool. I did get a guinea pig account. I did pay for 2 social media audits. I did a social media audit on myself. It cost about $15, and then I did a social media audit on a famous politician. And politicians don't have a expectation to privacy for their social media posts because they're politicians. And what it showed that politician is pretty much almost all red, that you wouldn't want that politician. If you were a hiring company, you wouldn't hire them.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. Because they made so many racist posts, sexist posts, this kind of post, that kind of post, that would be considered as like corporate risk. So I thought that if you're theoretically, that kind of tool could be helpful also to legal cases if we're doing a triage of what would be negative or disparaging posts.
Okay. So in my mind, I wasn't thinking of it in the way of hiring. I guess I was thinking of, like there's a bunch of activists who are for environmental presence, right? Environmental harm. 99% of those, hold on. 99% of those are going to be completely safe. But the one group that's going to go and cut the cable on a monorail in Canada, I want to know, like, is there a section of those that are a lot more negative posting than others, maybe?
I think you could use something like Fairly to do that. But then you definitely would have to look at the ethical.
Well, I'm not saying focus on that person. I'm saying as a whole, people who have this nearby or whatever, then see if we can find like outshoots where people are maybe using dehumanizing language and things like that.
Well, absolutely, you could do that, and I think that it's a strange concept, because when you look at the evolution of AI, because Fairly is not the only one out there. I mean, Fairly, I like Fairly because it's easy to use. They have very clear ethics. They have very clear kind of guardrails on what you can and can't do. And I think they have a pretty good mission of this is to support your corporate culture in a positive way. But with all of the AI stuff coming out and sentiment analysis, there's a whole bunch of other tools that are coming out that are similar. And so, I mean, I think that there would be there's a lot of different options for doing that kind of a analysis. So with this legal case, if somebody had been looking at that person's social media posts with an automated tool, they might have picked up this person is being harassing.
Right. Absolutely.
So I don't know. So that's just my thought. So what ethical limits should exist around collecting social media content from victims, witnesses, family members, and uninvolved third parties when doing a legal case? Do you want me to repeat that one?
Yeah, repeat it. Sorry.
So, what ethical limitations should exist around collecting social media content, if you're looking at a legal case, from victims, witnesses, family members, and third parties?
Well, as far as OSINT collection, there is, ethical guidelines. Generally, almost every organization has some ethical guidelines, and the idea is make sure that one, you're not going to do any harm. So you're collecting, you're not necessarily going to like release any information. Also, hopefully, you have a privacy policy for your client, but as well as that will also include any personal information that you gather from anything during your case. So, for example, if I'm gathering information from my case, I'm only going to keep it for a certain amount of time. I'm going to have it encrypted, and I'm going to have it all notated, right? I'm trying to think of what else you mean for this. So go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good.
Okay. I'm trying to so again, there are definite ethic things, like make sure you're using publicly collected information. Also, depending on where you are, there's different guidelines as well. And I know that in the US, we're probably the most loosey-goosey as far as that goes, but that doesn't mean you can just gather everything and keep it forever and whatever. It just means that, pay close attention. What are you gathering? Does it have to do with your case? Don't just gather everything willy-nilly. You don't want that much data anyway.
And I think that, a good guideline, even if you are in the US, is kind of to look at GDPR and how GDPR sets up their guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of resources on GDPR that people can look up, and they can use that kind of as a baseboard and say, okay, I want to adopt this.
I do think that's a really good baseline, because one, you're never going to run across any, I think you're not going to run afoul of anyone's rules if you are following GDPR. There's there may be some that have maybe some higher restrictions in certain areas, and my thoughts are having to do with children maybe specifically. But if you look into what GDPR allows, what COPPA allows, and there's make sure that in your jurisdiction you know exactly what rules there are in place. GDPR is a good one to follow. You're not gonna go astray.
Right.
At the moment.
I agree. Okay, so let's see here. So the next part I wanted to go to was lessons for law enforcement and analysts. So with this case, I think there's a lot of lessons on that it since it has laid this precedence of, you have to now consider that when you're doing an investigation. You have to consider or place a stronger emphasis on the social media posts as they relate to other things in the timeline, because in the past it was like, oh, it's just a social media post. Right? But I mean, if you combine it with everything else in the holistic picture, it's not just a post.
It could be just as important as the shell casing you found on the scene.
Yep. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons. And then, what warning signs could trigger a deeper digital investigation in stalking?
So we're talking about, in this case specifically, or
in harassment, or in a workplace conflict, domestic dispute.
Okay, so read the question again.
What warning signs should trigger a deeper digital investigation for stalking, harassment, or workplace conflict?
Okay, so I'm going to guess that what you mean is there is some workplace conflict already, or the other cases are already, and you're looking to see okay, when should I be oh, I need to go find their social media account, right? That's the question. Well, first of all, your complainant is going to complain to you about the social media, probably, but you still, they might say, oh yeah, they're doing something on TikTok. That is a sign to me that I need to look a little deeper. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here.
That's okay. And this one is a good one, because it shows there is a line, between free speech and when something is a threat. So the thing is, how can open source intelligence support threat assessments without over criminalizing speech? And this is a very hotly debated topic.
Okay, can I go back to the last one though? Because when I was sneezing in the middle, I wasn't quite done with it. So the idea about going deeper digital in the
Yeah.
digital, I think you almost always have to go at least take a sweep through the digital, and then that's going to let you know if you're going to go deeper or not. So for example, again, if we go back to my harassment case I did a little while back, that harassment was happening through text, but that I knew that I was going to get more than just text messages based on this person. So I was able to identify social media accounts, identify through this person's own, the harasser's own social media accounts, other victims of this kind of harassment, not related at all whatsoever to my victim. And that had to do with several different social media accounts online. Again, our case never started with social media. It started with text messages. So.
Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. And Gesundheit, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now to what the question you were going.
So this one is a hotly debated, topic, politically and logically and analytically, but how can OSINT support threat assessments without over-criminalizing speech?
Okay, so my opinion is that we're not over-criminalizing speech using OSINT against it. If you put something out there on the internet and you see it later come back at you in a court case, sorry. OSINT had no criminalization against your speech. We're not saying you shouldn't be doing this kind of speech. Maybe Sarah, in that question you had an example that will change my mind on that, but I'm thinking that there's not a way that OSINT is going to criminalize speech.
Well, I think that there was a case recently where I forget which state it was, where somebody made a joke, or what they thought was a joke, and said that a political figure
I know what you're talking about, the 86 one.
Yeah. So but
I don't think that criminalizes speech. That still has to go through the courts even. There's a lot of people saying 86 this person, 86 that person, without it being considered a threat. And just one time right now where it's being considered a threat in the court cases, I think it's going to get tossed out. I don't think that has anything to do with over-criminalization of speech. I think that this is a political battlefield and not a legal battlefield, I guess is what I'll say.
Hold on. So actually, there was a college student just recently who got arrested and tried.
86 something?
No. She made a WhatsApp group chat. WhatsApp group chat referenced the Israeli Prime Minister in mid-April 2026. And she said, drop some bonbons for us capstone students. And so that was interpreted as drop bombs, and she was arrested and tried.
Where was she arrested at? Where was she a student?
This was in Florida. Let me double check that. Yeah, Florida International University.
I need to look at this case because it doesn't seem right. There's got to be something more to it.
So no, her name is Gabriela Saldana. She's a 20-year-old student at Florida International University. She was arrested and charged with making written threats to kill or do bodily harm after posting messages in WhatsApp group chats referencing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in mid-April 2026, where she wrote, "Netanyahu, if you can hear me, drop some bonbons for us capstone students." And it was interpreted as a bomb threat. So that to me is where it goes just off the wire, where you have to have some kind of guardrail.
I'm still going to argue that OSINT didn't do anything to.
No, but somebody did online research on those messages and said this is a bomb threat and it's not bonbons, but it was.
That's interpretation of the courts and everything. That has nothing to do with the OSINT, I think. So OSINT is the methodology that they use to find this and whatever. But OSINT didn't have anything to do with criminalizing that speech. Now, personally, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, that does sound like a joke, but I don't know the full. This is the first time I've heard of this, and I don't know the full extent of this case, and so I can't really make a thing on here except that OSINT did nothing to do with criminalizing this speech. That's more of a political issue, and I try to stay as much out of that as possible. Although, again, in my opinion, It does sound like a joke. So,
Well, it was intended as a joke, but it was actually prosecuted as a threat. So I think
what else is the context there? I don't have the rest of the context. Because again, this goes back to even the case where my person that was being harassed, things that the harasser said to her, to me, would mean nothing.
right.
So what was going on in the context of this group or of this person, even maybe not even the group, but of that person? Maybe there's more to it. I guess I would want to read the court case information. There's got to be more to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think though that it also raises an interesting concept though with this case on this edition of OSINT IRL is theoretically you can have people now that can weaponize people's social media posts and saying, say that it's being this way or it's being taken this way.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying that like somebody could see a post and say, this is a threat against me. This is a threat. You're not saying it is a threat. And that could be them using it as a weapon against the poster.
Which could have a chilling effect, on speech. So
and again, it's still not an issue, but that's like who takes it and
right. So it's a weird thing, when you're looking at it. But I do think that you have an OSINT aspect to this, and you also have like a snowball effect to it. It's like you have a precedence where open source intelligence can be used for assessing these kinds of things more for legal cases. At the same time, this could cause a both positive and negative outcomes, for other court cases. But
right, but that can be the same thing as when like people fighting against genetic DNA. It could be positive and negative. So I mean, I still don't think that's the investigator who's like swabbing the DNA's issue, and we are that investigator in the case of OSINT. We're collecting the stuff and then we pass the information forward.
Okay. So the next one, whoops.
Well, actually, we are running out of time.
So I was about to say we're running out of time. So the next one, I just wanted to show the Fairly website real quick.
Sure.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So
we could have been showing it when we were talking about it.
I know, and I should have thought about that. I think it's this one.
I did see it is in the links in the show notes. So if anybody wants to look below where we are right now, you will see we already do have show notes on all the services, and that will be one of the links there. All right, let's add this to the stage.
Yeah.
Fairly.
Yeah. So that's just the Fairly website. I think it's a very interesting tool for screening candidates for any kind of organizational culture. And Fairly is not a sponsor, but so I'm not doing like an advertisement for them. But I have tested this and it worked very well. So that's why I'm sharing it.
We often share tools we love, whether they're sponsors or not. Just fact is, there's some really awesome tools out there.
Yes, exactly. So, okay. Then the next thing is, Kirby, do you have any announcements?
Sure, I do. Actually, we're going to be in Osmosis. I don't know if you've seen this banner floating around below here. I'm speaking with Amber Schroeder at Osmosis in Bonita Springs, Florida. If you're not already signed up, go ahead and sign up. I'm really excited to be there again, and we are hosting the OSC room there, which is the certification room, kind of like a VIP room for people who have gotten the certification already, and I hope I will see some of you there. Sarah, do you have some announcements?
Nope, just please come check us out on knowledgebase.pluses.net. And then I think I have some AI swap. And it is
one last thing.
Yes.
Thank you to our sponsors, Osmosis, Forensic OSINT, and Paraben. All right.
Thank you, sponsors.
Let's see your slop.
Okay. I picked ferrets. So we will do ferret slop. Just a second.
Oh, stop sharing. That's all right.
Sorry, didn't mean to do that.
Fine in your slop. So AI slop, if you're new here, we throw a little bit of AI slop in at the end. Sarah looks for the weirdest thing she can find.
And I have the URL. Just a second. It lost on my
in your browsers.
It did lose in my browser. But I saved the URL. So
Well, it is on our notes page.
aha. Okay. Whoops. And pause. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to fix this because it's worth watching. It is
Sure.
called ferrets.
Okay. All right, here we go. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Here's some next week.